Mr. President, one of the fundamental purposes of this body is to debate the biggest issues facing our nation, and to do so in an honorable way. The Senate is for debate, but not as an abstraction. It is to be addressing and ultimately solving the meatiest challenges that the Constitution demands that we tackle. Unfortunately, a great deal of our debate is weak and embarrassing. Much of it falls off the trivial side of the cliff or the shrill side of the cliff. During my time serving Nebraskans in this place, I hope to be aligned with those who want fighting and debating in this place, but it needs to be meaningful fighting. It needs to be honorable, honest debating. To that end, there is a terrific column this week by Pete Wehner in Commentary Magazine. Partly because the column is about Daniel Patrick Moynihan, in whose desk I here intentionally sit. Partly because it is about C.S. Lewis, a man whose writings have changed my life. And partly because it is just darn good exhortation to us, I would like to read a portion of this column into the Senate record today. Wehner begins, "While reading Greg Wiener's fascinating book, American Burke, I came across this comment, quote, Daniel Patrick Moynihan's intellectual curiosity was such that he gravitated toward thinkers with whom he disagreed precisely because he disagreed with them and could consequently learn something from them," close quote. This observation reminded me of an incident in 1948 involving C.S. Lewis and Elizabeth Anscombe, a Catholic convert who was considered one of the most brilliant moral philosophers of her day. Lewis was the president of the Socratic Club at Oxford, an open forum that met every Monday evening and whose purpose was to discuss the intellectual difficulties connected with religion and with Christianity in particular. Lewis begins, quote, "In any fairly large and talkative community, such as a university, and I would add, such as a Senate, there is always a danger that those who think alike should gravitate together into coteries where they will henceforth encounter opposition only in the emasculated form of rumor, that the outsiders say thus and such. The absent are so easily refuted. Complacent dogmatism thrives, and differences of opinion are embittered by group hostility. Each group hears not the best, but the worst that every other group has to offer." Close quote. On February 2nd, 1948, Anscombe and Lewis debated a portion of Lewis's new book, Miracles, which, with Anscombe reading a paper pointing out a fatal flaw in Lewis's argument. It was a complicated critique having to do with the conflation of irrational and non-rational factors in belief formation. The result of the debate, which Lewis thought that he lost, was revisions to his own book. Anscombe, while not convinced by the changes that Lewis made, did say, quote, "The fact that Lewis rewrote his chapter and rewrote it so that it now has these new qualities addressed shows his honesty and his seriousness," close quote. That's not all. When Lewis was asked to nominate speakers for the 1951 Socratic season, Anscombe was his first choice. Quote, "The lady is quite right to refute what she thinks are bad theistic arguments. But does this not also oblige her as a Christian to go find good ones in their place? Having obliterated me as an apologist, ought she not now to try to succeed me?" Close quote. There's something impressive about the qualities demonstrated by Moynihan and Lewis, a willingness to learn from others, including those with whom we disagree. There is in this an admirable blend of both intellectual humility and self-confidence. The humility to know that at best we possess only a partial understanding of the truth, which could be enlarged, and the self-confidence that allows for refinement and amendment of our own views in light of new arguments, new circumstances, and new insights. Beyond that, it is a useful reminder that the quality we ought to strive for isn't certitude, but to be a seeker of truth. That is, I think, what separates ideologues from true intellectuals. The former is determined to defend a pre-existing position, come whatever may, interpreting facts to fit a worldview that is already well beyond challenge. The latter seeks genuine enlightenment and is eager to discard the false notions that they may hold and values rather than resents those who would help them on a journey. The purpose of debating, then, isn't so much just to win an argument as it is to deepen our understanding of how things really and truly are. It isn't to outshout our opponents, but at least now and then, to listen to them, to learn from them, to weigh their arguments with some care, to learn from them. It's worth noting that Lewis warned about simply surrounding ourselves with like-minded people who reinforce our own biases. It matters how debates are conducted properly so that we might help civilize one another. What a quaint notion. In saying all this, I'm not insisting that everyone you disagree with is someone you can learn from, nor that everyone's views contain equal measures of wisdom. Some people really don't know what they're talking about. Some people really do hold pernicious and false views, and some people really do deserve harsh criticism. My point is simply that because the pull is so strong in the other direction, most of us use debates just as a way to amplify pre-existing views rather than to refine them, to try to crush our opponents rather than to engage them or understand them, and to focus on the weakest rather than the strongest arguments found in the opposing views. The Moynihan-Lewis model is a good one to strive for. Weiner continues, I understand that talking about such things can sound hopelessly high-minded, and for some it might signal a mushy lack of conviction. When you're in a political death match with the other side, after all, the idea that you might learn from your opponent seems either ridiculously naive and slightly treasonous. But of course, this reaction highlights just how far things have gone off course. To be sure, American politics have always been a raucous affair. As Madison put it in Federalist 55, quote, had every Athenian citizen been a Socrates, every Athenian assembly would still have been a mob, close quote. The question is whether one strokes the passions of the mob or appeals to reason. As someone who doesn't do nearly well enough in this regard, I rather admire the Lewis model. He was a better man, and Miracles became a better book for having recognized that he lost a debate. For Lewis to then promote the woman who defeated him in the debate, despite having been bested by her, is doubly impressive. Yet in many respects, it's not that surprising. After all, Lewis was a man who cared more about striving after truth than attending to his own pride. He cared more about learning from arguments than just winning them. And so should we. Close quote. Again, Mr. President, this is Pete Weiner in Commentary Magazine with instructive words for all of us laboring here in this body. Thank you.